My name is Lena. I'm a financial aid counselor here at USF. I'm going to be going over how to complete your 2025-2026 FAFSA. Hopefully you all learned some useful information today. And Okay, so before we begin, something to know is that this webinar will be recorded and will be made available on the financial aid website along with the presentation slide. Our presentation slide will have links, so that might be helpful for you to download after our session. And then if you have any questions, please do use the Q&A function to ask those questions. Jason, my colleague, will be answering those questions as the presentation is going. And then at the end, we will have a live Q&A session after we finish the slides. Okay. Today, we'll be covering the 2025-2026 FAFSA updates. We will be going over what is needed to complete your FAFSA, how to create your FSA ID, contributor information, and then we will be reviewing different sections on the 2025-2026 FAFSA. We'll be going over the FAFSA submission summary briefly. Then we'll have our live Q&A. And then just so you all know, we will not be going over housing and admissions questions. If you have any of those questions, we will refer you to the Housing and Admissions Department. Okay. So here is the 2025-2026 FAFSA timeline. Typically, applications do open October 1st. However, that is for this year, that's when the beta testing started. The FAFSA was made available to a limited number of students, participating organizations, schools, and community groups. And then earlier this month on the 13th, 1,000 of additional students, parents, and organizations were included to complete and submit their FAFSA. At the end of this month, that beta will be expanded and made available to everyone to complete. And then December 1st will be when the FAFSA is officially released. So to complete the FAFSA, you have two options. Students can complete their FAFSA online, and then there's also a PDF paper FAFSA that students can submit via the mail. We highly suggest that students use the online version because it is quicker. Once submitted, it takes about 1 to 3 days to process. And then whereas the PDF version, if you were to submit it, it might take 3 to 4 weeks before it is processed. So mainly it is an alternative for those who cannot use the online version. And then how do you prepare to complete the application? First, you would want to make a student aid account, also known as the Federal Student Aid ID. And then next, you want to gather information needed to complete the FAFSA. You want to determine who are the contributors on your FAFSA. And for dependent students, you can use the Who's My FAFSA Parent Wizard tool in order to determine the parent contributor that will be on your application, that is necessary for your application. And then to stay informed on up to date on the 2025 FAFSA change, 2025-2026 FAFSA changes, you can follow Federal Student Aid on their social media sites. So that's available on X, formerly known as Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. They also have announcements on their own site that you can follow as well. So the things that you will need in order to complete the FAFSA includes the FSA ID, and we have the link here to complete or to create your account. And then also you will need parent or spouse contributor information, and that includes their name, date of birth, social security number if they do have a social security number, their email address, and then income and asset information. And then for students, we require their social security number and their A number if for eligible non-citizens, and then tax returns from the 2020 3 tax year, records of child support if you're receiving child support, current balances of cash savings and checkings accounts, and also the net worth of investments, business and or farms. Okay, so we did mention briefly the FSA ID. So what is a federal student aid ID? That is an account, a username and password used to log in to your FAFSA, but it is also used for all federal student aid products and tools on the studentaid.gov website. All students and parent and spouse contributors will be required to have an FSA ID. If you've created one in the past, that will be the same one that you use for this application. You do not need to create a new one for every new application that you submit. Parents and spouse contributors without an SSN will also be required to make an FSA ID, although additional verifications will be needed for those accounts. Okay. And then in order to create your FSA ID, you would go to the studentaid.gov website. You will need to provide your name, date of birth, and social security number if you have one. You will need to enter a unique username, your email address, a strong password, mailing address, phone number, and communication preferences, and complete challenge questions and answers. You need to verify and confirm that information and then agree to the terms and conditions. It will take up to 3 business days for your FSC ID to be verified. For those of you who already have an FSA ID, if you've forgot your password, you can reset your password on the studentaid.gov website. You will need access to a verified email or a verified phone number that you use to create the account. And to ensure that you do not lose this information, we highly recommend that you either write the information down or try to use a password manager. Okay. We've also talked about contributors briefly. So what is a contributor? A contributor is any individual that's required to provide consent and approval for federal tax information along with their signature on the FAFSA form, and that includes the student. And then based on their dependency and marital status, it might also include the following individuals. So for dependent students, that could mean a biological or adopted parent. And if a parent has remarried, then that parent's spouse may also be included as a contributor. And for independent students, if they're married, that may include their spouse. Okay, so there is a tool to help you determine which parent is a contributor on your FAFSA, especially for students whose parents are separated or are divorced. And that would be the Who's My Parent wizard tool, and you can find that on the studentaid.gov website. Okay. So the information that's required when inviting a contributor to complete the FAFSA will include their legal name as stated on their social security card, again, if they have one, their date of birth and their social security number and email address. Okay, now we're going to go over the application itself. So this is the FAFSA landing page. Right now, it says the 2025-26 application is coming soon. However, December 1st, you will be able to start the application. You want to be sure that you are completing the application for the correct academic year. So the 2025-26 FAFSA is for fall 2025 to summer 2026. If you are attending school before then you will need to complete the 2024-2025 application. And then on this page, you can be directed to choose start a new form or edit an existing form. To access the FAFSA form, all students are required to log in via their FSA ID. Once you get to this section, if you do not have one, you can create an account as shown in the screenshot, or if you forgot your password, this is also where you can reset your password. And then after logging in, you will need to select whether you are a student or a parent starting this application. And then after that, there will be some videos that will go over the FAFSA process that you may watch. The first video you'll see talks about what the FAFSA form is. The next one goes over what a contributor is, who needs to fill out the form. Number 3 is what to expect in the process. And then the last video you should see is about what happens after you submit your FAFSA. And then after that, there will be a question that asks the state of legal residence for the student. It's important to answer this section because for those of you who are a California resident, this is used to it's used to consider whether you're eligible for the Cal Grant. And then next, you'll be asked to provide a consent and approval in order to transfer and use tax information from the IRS to the FAFSA. Do know that consent must be provided to be eligible for federal student aid and to also have a completed FAFSA, which then we use to determine your state aid and then your institutional need-based aid as well. If a student did not file a tax return, they still need to provide consent in order to receive aid. Students and contributors have 2 opportunities to provide consent and approval prior to submitting their FAFSA. When the consent and approval is not provided, the student aid index will not be calculated and the student will be ineligible for student aid. For those of you who do not know, a student aid index is an index that is calculated via the FAFSA, and it's used to determine your aid eligibility. And then a warning message will appear regarding the federal student aid eligibility if you decline to consent or approve. Then the student will be asked about their marital status, and they would answer their current marital status, not the marital status that is listed on their tax forms if there has been a change since. Then they will be asked questions regarding their grade level and their bachelor's degree completion. And specifically their completion status as of the 2025-2026 academic year. Some students make a mistake here, stating that they've already received a bachelor's degree prior to that the 2025-2026 academic year. If you make a mistake on that question, you might not be eligible for the Pell Grant. So this question, like with other questions, please do read carefully before you answer. Then the FAFSA will ask about the student's personal circumstances. You should read all the answers that are listed and select any that apply to you. If it does not apply to you, you can select none of these apply. This question helps determine a student's dependency status. And then the next question will be about students' homelessness status. So it asks, at any time on or after July 1st, 2024, was the student unaccompanied and either homeless or self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? If you select yes, you may be considered independent. So again, this is another question that helps determine a student's dependency status. Another question that is used to determine a student's dependency status is a question on unusual circumstances. So if the student's asked if any unusual circumstances prevent them from contacting their parents, or if they can contact their parents, would that pose a risk to the student to do so? So some circumstances may be considered if the student is a homeless youth. And if that is the case, you might want to revisit the previous question and also make sure that that aligns. If you say yes to this question, please contact the financial aid office to determine if there's additional steps. At USF, there are additional steps, including supporting documents that you will need, that we will ask for students to provide, depending on the reason they selected yes as their answer. Okay. And then based on all of those questions, your dependency status will be determined. For dependent students, they will be asked this question about the direct unsubsidized loan. If students' parents are refusing to provide information for the FAFSA, the student can say so on this application, and in which case they will only receive the unsubsidized loan. Students should be careful when they're answering this question, because if they select that they only want the unsubsidized loan because their parent is not willing to provide finance or information on the application, then they will not be eligible for any aid except for the unsubsidized loan. I guess minus any merit aid the school is receiving, but any aid that's related to the FAFSA, if you answer that you only want the unsubsidized loan, that's all you will receive. So be careful when answering this question. Okay, so for students that are dependent, they will need to answer questions about their parents. Students will need to invite their parent contributors to complete their portions of the FAFSA. The Parent Wizard tool will help you determine that which parent to use by asking you filtering questions. And then based on the answers to the previous questions, students will be asked to enter personal information on the parent in order to have an invite sent to them. And you want to make sure that when you're answering these questions that they match what the parent had entered when creating their FSA ID. If it does not match, for example, the birthday or the social security number or the email doesn't match, then they might not get an invite to complete their portion of the FAFSA. Then the student will be asked demographic questions. First, they will be asked about their gender identity. This question does not impact a student's eligibility for federal aid, and this information is also not shared with the schools. And then they will be asked about their race and ethnicity. This also will not impact their eligibility for federal aid, and this information will also not be offered to the schools. The student will then be asked about their citizenship status. Eligible non-citizens will be asked to provide an A number, and students who select the third option, which is that they're neither U.S. citizens nor eligible non-citizens, they are not eligible for federal aid. Students who may select that option could be students who have a social security number through DACA. At USF, if you're a student with DACA, we would not ask you to complete the FAFSA. For our DACA students, if they're an in-state student, they would be using the California DREAM Act application. And if they're out of state, they would be using the CSS profile. But another institution might require the FAFSA. Okay. And then another question will ask about the parent's education level, where they ask, how whether a student has attended, or sorry, student's parent has attended college. Then the student will be asked about their high school completion status, and at the point that they start their 2025-2026 academic year. Please do fill this to answer this question appropriately. Students will need a high school diploma or equivalent in order to receive federal aid. So don't select none of the above if that is not the case. So some of our students who are international students might select that, but if you're an international student and you went to a school abroad, you should still enter that you received a high school diploma. Do know that when they ask you for the state, enter a foreign country instead, and then you may have to manually enter the name of your high school. And then you'll get to the financial section. You'll be asked whether you filed for taxes in 2023. If so, then they will transfer data from the IRS. And hopefully, majority of the questions will be transferred, or the data will be transferred over, and any additional supplemental tax return questions will be asked, and you can enter them manually. For students that did not file taxes, then they will be answering the questions manually. Okay. Students will also be asked about their assets. This is quite new to the application. I think it started for the 2024 application, but the child support received will be is considered an asset. So typically this is for dependent students to enter into their assets, and also parents. Oh, I forgot to mention this, but for the financial section, the students portion looks similar to what a parent will see in their contributor financial section. So it applies to both. Okay, so for the assets section, you'll also be asked to include the balances of any cash savings and checkings account, the net worth of investments such as real estate, stocks, bonds, and CDs. You do not include the primary home as an asset. The primary home is the home that you and your parents live in. And then you would also include the net worth of any businesses and investment or investment farms. The net worth would be the value minus any debt owed against them. Also be aware that when you're entering the assets and also income information, that you're entering it for your section. In the past, some students have entered their parents' assets in the student section, so you want to keep that in mind when you're completing the application. Okay. For independent students and parents, family size is pulled from the tax return. And however, some things might have changed since the tax returns were filed. If the family size that they pulled in was incorrect, you can enter that manually on the FAFSA. And they will also ask for how many people in your family are currently, or in 2025 and 2026 academic year, will be attending college. And then you will have to, or students will have to enter the colleges that they apply to so that the colleges may receive the FAFSA. Students may select up to 20 schools to send the FAFSA to, and for USF, our school code is 001-325. And if you are applying to more than 20 schools, you may submit this first, and after it processes, then you can go back into the application and add more schools to submit your FAFSA to. Okay. And then once that's done, you should see a FAFSA review page. So this will allow you to check all of your answers, make sure that they were answered properly. And then it will show you the contributor or contributors that you've invited. You can edit that information if it's incorrect, and then continue. And then you will get to the signature page where you will need to read and acknowledge the terms and conditions provided in the section. After agreeing to the terms and conditions and signing the signature page, you will be able to submit your FAFSA. And if there are contributors that are invited to complete the FAFSA, your FAFSA is not considered complete until they have submitted their portion. So you and the contributors will need to submit everything and consent to everything in order to have a completed FAFSA. And once that's done, you will see a FAFSA status page. It will display information on the next steps for the students. The student is reminded that their FAFSA, like I said earlier, is not completed until the contributors complete their section. It allows them to check and track the status of the FAFSA form and also edit the contributor invite. Okay, now on to the contributors view. So this is what you will see if you receive a contributor invite. Once this is what you'll see in your email. You should receive an invite through your email, but if you are unable to, or if you do not find that email, you can log in to your student aid account and then go to the activities page. That will also show an invitation to complete your portion of the FAFSA. Okay, so contributors must also provide consent and approval. By providing consent, the federal tax information can be transferred directly from the IRS to the FAFSA, and then students will be ineligible to receive aid if the parent or parent contributor or the spouse contributor does not provide consent. And you should provide consent regardless of whether you filed taxes for the 2023 tax year. And after that's completed, there will be a contributor confirmation page. The confirmation page for contributor provides information on tracking the student's FAFSA and next steps. The student will receive an email to let them know that you've completed your section. And then once the student and the contributors have completed, signed and submitted their portions of the FAFSA, then the FAFSA will be considered complete. After the FAFSA is completed and processed, students will be able to see a FAFSA submission summary. The FAFSA submission summary shows a overview of eligibility for federal aid. It will show them the FAFSA form answers, as in how they answered the FAFSA questions, the school information, and also next steps. It will also display the student aid index. This is an index calculated to determine a family's ability to pay for school and helps determine eligibility for aid. This number does not represent the dollar amount you're expected to pay, however. Students might need the student aid index sometimes to apply for scholarships, so that's a good number to keep on hand. Okay, and then you can see also when the FAFSA was reviewed and when it was processed. You may print and save the FAFSA submission summary to keep for your records. Of course, if you don't do that, you can always log back into your student aid account and access the FAFSA submission summary at your leisure. If you have any questions related to the FAFSA form in this process, especially if you have any technical difficulties, please contact the Federal Student Aid Information Center. Their contact information is listed on the slide. And then you may also contact us, the Financial Aid Office. Our number is 415-422-3387. Our email is financialaid@usfca.edu. And our offices are on Lone Mountain main campus, room 203. Our front desk times are from 9 to 4 every day except for Wednesday. We're open from 1 to 3 on Wednesdays. Phone lines are open from 9 to 1. And then We have information on our website as well, and some resources there. We also have we have Zoom drop-in hours from 1 to 4 on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and then on Wednesdays from 1 to 2:30. And you can scan the QR code to get information on our hours, and also our Zoom link is there as well. Okay, now on to the questions. Let's see what questions have been unanswered. Or, oh, there's not a lot.
Hey,
Jason, do you want to moderate?
hey, Lena. Yeah, I could go ahead and moderate the Q&A for today. So, yeah, so for our participants, if I've gone in and answered a lot of questions, but if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in using the Q&A, and we'll go ahead and answer them live here instead. But Lena, so we have a few questions from our attendees earlier regarding listing schools on their FAFSA or colleges on their FAFSA. They can
Hmm.
put up to 20 schools.
Right.
What and I hadn't mentioned that, community colleges should also be included. Are
Yes.
there any suggestions as to, a lot of families here may be deciding
Hmm.
which colleges they will be
Hmm.
attending for this upcoming year?
Hmm.
So they don't know, which college they're attending.
Hmm.
What was your recommendation in terms of putting those schools down, or if they have more than 20 schools that they
Right.
may be thinking about? Any
Right.
you can add regarding that?
Hmm. Any school that you're applying to or city colleges that you plan on applying to, please include them on your list, on your college list. If it's more than 20, submit first, the first 20, and then once the application processes, you can go back into the application, add additional schools, and then submit again. And if you don't end up going to those schools or you don't end up applying to those schools, it doesn't matter. It's okay. Just list the schools that you're considering applying to or are applying to.
Thank you. And a follow-up to that regarding Cal State schools, so UCs and
Mhm.
CSUs. Um, does the FAFSA go to each school or the entire Cal State UC systems?
Each school, every school that you're applying to, you'll have to list separately.
Thank you. And then the next questions are regarding contributor information. That seems to be a hot topic coming in through the questions and answers. So regarding the contributors, um, if the parents are married and
Hmm.
they file a married
Hmm.
joint tax return, um, does one parent need to create an FSA ID and complete their portion, or will two parents be required
So
or be needed?
if married and filed together, then just one contributor is required.
Okay. And then the follow-up to that would be for families or parents who are divorced
Hmm.
or never married.
Hmm.
Then which parent would that be that would need to create their account and provide their information?
So it depends. So if divorced and living, oh, well, divorced and living together, then both will need to be contributors. But sorry, divorced and living together and filed separately. Sorry. Then both will need to be contributors. Both will need their tax information. And then what's the second part of the question? If divorced
For
and not living together, then and filing separately, then the parent that contributes the most in the last 12 months will be the contributor, and their tax information is what is used. And then never married, if never married and separated, not living together, then only one parent will be the contributor, and and it is the parent that is providing the majority of the financial support within the last 12 months of your FAFSA submission. Does that answer the
Yeah,
questions?
that is
Right.
perfect. Let's see. So what about this question?
Hmm.
So we have a student, I'm assuming,
Hmm.
that the parents do not work, or
Hmm.
and they do not file a tax return. Do
Hmm.
they still need to complete their portion of the FAFSA?
Yes. Yes, they do.
All right. What about can I still apply if I have no contributors and it's just myself?
Yes, yes. If you're not required to have a contributor and it's just you and you're an independent student, then you can receive aid as an independent student without contributors.
All right. Thank you for that. Um, what about this one? Our Roth IRA, so retirement accounts,
Hmm.
essentially, and 401ks,
Hmm.
part of parents' assets. So I guess this is referring to the asset question regarding the value,
Hmm.
regarding retirement accounts. Are they, um, I guess, are they reported in their asset information?
Untaxed portions of I mean, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
portions of the pension and IRA, that will be, there's a question on that on the FAFSA. And the FAFSA will ask if any portion of that has been rolled over, in which case, if there is, please state it on the FAFSA, um, or else it will
Yeah.
be counted towards your SAI calculations.
hmm Yeah, and I'll add to that regarding assets too is if it's the value of your
Mhm.
retirement account, your 401k, then don't include the value as
Right.
the assets. But if
Hmm.
it is taxed or if you
Hmm.
did withdraw from it, then yeah, that will either be counted in your taxable income on your tax return or the untaxed information when you pull that. So I guess a double kind of type of question. The next question is then, is the FAFSA due in December, or is that the release date for all students?
That is the release date. If depending on the institutions that you're applying for, they might have different priority deadlines, but that's the release date.
Thank you for that. Let's see. So for some of the personal questions, we will not answer them today. But if there are questions regarding your specific situation, feel free to contact the Office of Financial Aid, and we'll be happy to help you. Um, do you know this one? So how do you invite parents contributor who has ITIN and not
Hmm.
a social security number? This is regarding, I guess, the invitation of a
Hmm.
parent as well as
Hmm.
FSCID
Hmm.
creation.
So on the FAFSA, if they ask for a social security number for the contributor, but you don't have one, you would not enter anything. Please do not enter an ITIN where they ask you for a social security number.
Thank you. Um, I guess we can answer this one. So if the student has savings
Hmm.
in their name under the
Yes.
parent's bank account, is that considered parent asset or student assets?
Mm, I would say that's technically still under the parent's name, right? Like, because so it depends
I guess
on
that would
what
make
the
sense if it's under
situation,
the student's name, right? So
right?
if it's under a student name, then it
It
should be the student's
right.
asset at that point. Yeah,
Mm,
but yeah, I guess if there's if it's tied to a parent, I can
mm,
see it going both ways. So I guess it depends. But if it's solely under the student's name, then I can
mm.
see it be under student.
Yeah, just don't enter it both two times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Okay. I think we kind of answered this, right? But I see another question about the schools, being able to enter 20 schools. So if I'm applying to more than
Hmm.
20 schools, I add the first 20
Hmm.
and then go back to add more. Will
Yes.
one of the initial 20 be replaced by the others that I've added?
No, they if you've entered them once, they've received it. I guess the only thing is if you make corrections to your FAFSA, like actually the FAFSA form questions, you might need to resubmit to all of them. But otherwise, they've received your FAFSA. They don't need it. They don't need to stay on the list.
Mhm. Yeah, that's correct. So once you add them, they will
Yeah.
essentially the school will have your FAFSA on file, right? So even if you remove them, it doesn't take them off. But yeah. All right. Okay, I think this is a good one. So, I'm a U.S. citizen
Hmm.
So this is, I'm assuming, referring to the student
Hmm.
that's living out of the United States.
Hmm.
My parents do not file U.S. tax
Hmm.
return, but they file taxes in another country.
Hmm.
Should I apply for FAFSA, and how does it impact my eligibility?
So you would still submit the FAFSA, if you want federal student aid and also aid at institutions. That's important. It doesn't matter where your parents work or whether they have citizenship. It doesn't matter if they have a social security number. However, they would still be, if you're a dependent, you would still need them to make an FSA ID and enter their information. So if they were working outside of the country and making income outside of the country, that will be reported as foreign income, but it would still be on the FAFSA. You should still submit one.
Thank you.
Mm.
Oh yeah, this is another question that we kind of get a lot too, regarding the timing of submitting the FAFSA. So,
Mhm.
does applying early
Mhm.
help in any way to get more financial aid, or is it best to apply for FAFSA as early as possible? What is your
It,
recommendation there?
my recommendation is as soon as you can, please submit one. For some institutions, it does matter because of the funds running out. They might be giving out on a rolling basis. It's hard for me to say, but also a lot of students run into some issues when after they submit, they're going to realize that there's paperwork that they need to submit in addition to the FAFSA, or maybe they're running into some technical issues. So it's just best overall to submit early.
Thank you. And is there a deadline to submit the FAFSA?
We have a priority deadline. I think it's March. Was it? Was it
Yeah, I
March
guess depending
1st?
on yeah, if it's
Right.
if you're applying for early
Mm,
decision or regular decision,
right.
but yeah, priority deadline would be for our RD students.
Mm,
I would say March 2nd, to
mm,
align with the California
mm,
state aid application deadline, which is March 2nd.
right.
But if you're EA and ED, I would say recommendation there would probably be what, February 1st, maybe,
I see.
somewhere around there.
Right.
Um, but
Oh,
yeah, that's
and
the
the Cal Grant, they do have a hard deadline. So if
exactly.
you miss it, then that would be an issue. Um,
All right. So yeah, there's some good questions. Let's see. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in Q&A. I think we got a few more, but let's see what we have. Um, what about we have a question on 529 account, this regarding students'
mhm,
college savings account.
right.
Um, is that listed essentially? Would that be included?
Right. If the parent opened it for the student, then it would be listed under the student assets. But if a grandparent listed it, then it wouldn't be listed in the FAFSA.
Thank you. Um, so we have a question about I am only applying or I'm planning to enroll for
Mhm.
the second semester. So I guess not fall 24, but spring
Right.
20, sorry, fall
6.
25, but
Okay.
spring 26.
Right.
And I'm in the freshman year. Can I still apply for
Yes.
financial aid?
Yes, you can and you should.
Um, I guess another computer information question. My parents are married,
Hmm.
but separated, not
Hmm.
legally.
Hmm.
My mom files as head of household. Will my dad still need to submit his FAFSA or submit his portion of the FAFSA?
Right. Depends, are they living together? If they are not living together and they're separated, it doesn't matter if it's legally divorced or not. But if they're separated and not living together, then separated, not living together, then only the parent that is providing the most financially within the last 12 months, that parent will be the contributor. If they are separated but still living together, then both parents will have to act as contributors on the FAFSA.
Thank you. All right. Oh, yeah, this was a common question too earlier as well regarding high school. So
Hmm.
regarding the question
Hmm.
regarding high school completion status, where they receive a high school diploma, GED, etc.
Hmm.
I imagine a lot of our students here in this
Hmm.
webinar today are current high school students in
Hmm.
their senior year where they have not graduated high school yet. What
Hmm.
do they answer to that question?
Well, the question is asking whether they will have completed it by the 2025-2026 academic year. So if you've graduated by then, say this coming summer, then you would say yes, you will have your diploma by then.
Yep, thank you. Let's see. What about this question? So confirming the parent does not create an FSA ID until they get an invite from the student. Is that correct?
No. So the parent should make their FSA ID before the invite.
Um, for the assets part,
Mhm.
do I, the student, put my own assets while my parent put their own on their portion?
Yes. Yes. So you put your assets in your portion, the parent puts their assets in their portion. Please don't switch them, and please don't enter them like a double. Um, don't enter them
Mhm.
twice.
And then what about our parents or families that have remarried? So mom
Mhm.
filed married, filing separately, and they do not live together. Can one parent be the contributor? Um,
Um, so
I'm
there,
guessing when they file their taxes in 2023, they file
mhm,
as married filing separately, perhaps, and then
mhm.
maybe now remarried.
So the
Yeah.
the the marital status, they do include a remarried option. So you have to figure out first which parent, right, is the contributor. So in the last 12 months, who's contributing more, and then based off that, then you decide which parent. I'm guessing biological parent maybe. And then if that parent is remarried, then the step parent is also a contributor. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And I think we have some different scenarios that are coming in, around the same topic. Another question regarding parents. So the parents are
Mhm.
married but separated, not legally.
Right.
Mom files head of household on the tax return. Will the dad still need to submit the FAFSA? The
Uh,
parents are married,
right.
but they aren't legally separated.
Right. So, um, are they living together? If they are, I think I went through
Yeah,
this briefly, but if
yeah,
they are not living together, then only one parent would be included as a contributor. And that parent is the parent that contributed to your life expenses more within the last 12 months.
yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
Let's see. Yeah, some of these are repeating questions, so
Okay.
I'll try to kind of clear out, what we still have. Let's see. What about this one? So will the contributor's invite only be sent out after the student has already filled out their portion, which is on or after December 1st? So basically, will the contributor's invite be after the student fills out their portion of the FAFSA?
Yes. Yes. Because that's where they enter the contributor uh, information to generate the invite. Although the parent can
Uh,
also start the application. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. There's a yeah, parent can't start it, but I guess it's the reversed
right.
role. Let's see. Um, so I think earlier on we had a question from a student where, so on this FAFSA 25, 26, it collects the family's 2020 three income and tax
Mm-hmm.
information. And so I guess things change, right? I mean, in two
Mm-hmm.
years, we may have parents that experience job loss or
Mm-hmm.
something like that, where their 2023 income and
Mm-hmm.
tax information no longer reflects their family's
Mm-hmm.
financial circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
What is your suggestion there? What should they do? Because
Mm-hmm.
obviously we can't change, if the
Right.
FAFSA is asking 2023, we can't change it and use, a different year. But
Right.
what is the process for that in regards to changing families' financial circumstances?
So if there's a decrease, then you would want to contact the schools to ask if you can open a special circumstances appeal, in which then the school will ask you for supporting documents and can use your new income to calculate your eligibility for aid. So at USF, it's especially important to do your appeal your first year. It has the most impact your first year if there's been any changes to your family's income.
So this was more about timing. So once they submit the FAFSA,
Mhm.
when do they hear back about the financial aid they receive or what their financial package will look like or what they're being offered?
Right. It depends on the school. For us, after students are admitted in the spring, what time? I don't know. What month,
Uh,
Jason?
Let me see. So I'm going back off the past. So for our
Right.
EAED, I will assume that's probably later in February.
Hmm.
And then for our RDs, regular decision students, that'll be approximately mid-March, I would
Hmm.
say. Roughly 2 to 3 weeks after the missions decisions go out,
Hmm.
is what I would say the timeline would be, I would say. Let me see. We have a lot of questions now coming in. Let's see. What about income limits? We have some students and
Hmm.
families where they are saying they, possibly may make too much or
Uh,
concern about, how much income they're bringing in and if that will affect financial aid and, um, maybe they're not eligible for
hmm.
grants, scholarships, etc. What is your recommendation for somebody that may believe
Hmm.
they make too much,
Hmm.
or is concerned about, how much income they're bringing in affecting their financial aid?
My recommendation is to submit an application anyways, because grants may have different requirements. It's really hard to say what you could or could not be eligible for. You don't want to miss out. Just um, just in case, submit it. And some families might, like, even if you're not receiving grants and scholarships, might be offered federal student loans. Um, and yeah, sometimes students can receive grants just for submitting a FAFSA, just for having a FAFSA on file. So uh, it doesn't take that much time for a majority of the families submitting a FAFSA. So I would say submit it anyways, just in case.
Great suggestion there. So I know we're running out of time. We have about a minute or two. So we'll try to get maybe 2 or 3 more questions, but I'll just add that if we're not able to get to your questions today, feel free to send us an email or contact the financial aid office, and we're happy to help you. But let's see. So there's a question about FAFSA renewal or submitting a FAFSA. So will the FAFSA be available for all years the student attends, or do I have to reapply every year?
So you will need to reapply every year. So that just like there was a 24-25 FAFSA, which was for the 2024-2025 academic year, and there's a 2025-2026 academic year FAFSA. Every academic year, there will be a new FAFSA that you'll need to submit.
Thank you. I see a few Cal Grant questions coming in. I think it's because we brought up the topic of Cal Grant, which we didn't intend to talk about today. But regarding the Cal Grant deadline, what is the deadline for Cal to apply for Cal Grant? And number two, how does a
Uh-huh.
student apply for Cal Grant?
So it's March 2nd. And then for students who are eligible to use the FAFSA, then the FAFSA FAFSA is sufficient to apply for the Cal Grant. For those of you who are undocumented or have DACA and are a California resident, then you would submit a California Dream Act application um, to receive the Cal Grant, to apply for the Cal Grant. Yeah.
And then let's see if we could do one more question. Um, we've got a few questions from parents who are not working. I think we've
Mhm,
covered this a little bit
mhm,
as well. But if a parent is not
mhm.
working, do they still need to complete the FAFSA?
Yes. If you're not working and for instance there's no income, then you would just enter 0 when they ask you what
Mm,
income was was made in 2023.
thank you. And looks like that's all we have time for. So I'll pass that back on to you, Lena.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining us for the webinar. Once again, this is recorded. It will be posted on our website. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us via email or phone call or Zoom or in person. But thanks so much for coming and being such a great audience, great participant.